Chapter 25. Eiji wasn't sure what to expect as he approached Lord Felix's door. The god would have finished his own work first today, so he would most likely be waiting. But that was just the trouble. What would he be waiting for? What happened after kissing if someone didn't plan to bed you? Was Eiji supposed to pretend that last night had never happened? And what would his master want him to say about the wonderful note? When he entered, Lord Felix wasn't in the sitting room. Soft splashes from the god's washroom indicated that he was still cleaning up. His shift in the elder rooms must have run long. Grateful for the chance to do his own tidying up before letting his master see him, Eiji slipped behind his own curtain as quickly as he could. Perhaps it was silly to be so excited about this chance to do some primping. Clearly, Lord Felix didn't care if Eiji was disheveled from work. He certainly hadn't had a chance to straighten himself up before the god kissed him. Still, he couldn't help wanting to look his best. Eiji didn't realize he was stalling until he completed his 100th stroke with the hairbrush and then kept going. This was ridiculous. It was Lord Felix out there. Lord Felix who hadn't minded when Eiji threw up on him and made him cry. Why should Eiji be frightened to face him now, just because they'd kissed? Maybe it wasn't just the kiss. Maybe it was the way he daydreamed about it all day, swooning about the letter and bragging to his friends so outrageously that they had asked if he and his master were a couple. Maybe he was afraid to learn that the kiss hadn't changed anything about their relationship after all. Maybe... Eiji? Damn, how did such a soft voice manage to drive every other sound and thought from his mind? Eiji scrambled for the door/blanket, practically skidding into his bow at Lord Felix's feet. "Yes, my lord? How may I serve you?" The god had been hovering by the blanket, so close that Eiji's feet were still on the other side as he bowed. Now Lord Felix knelt. A second later, his fingers ghosted over Eiji's shoulder. "Would you please raise your head for me, sweetheart?" he asked. When Eiji met his master's eyes, he was surprised to find that Lord Felix looked a little flustered. The god was smiling his usual warm smile, but his eyes were nervous and searching in a way that Eiji hadn't seen before. He smelled different, too, slightly floral. Was that perfume? "Your day?" Lord Felix's voice was as close to a squeak as Eiji had ever heard it. How was your day?" "Your servant is well," Eiji squeaked back. "My lord's concern honors me." Lord Felix lifted a hand and fidgeted nervously with the end of one of his ropes of hair. "That's good. Silence stretched between them. Eiji dared a surreptitious sniff. Yes, definitely perfume. "I said you didn't need to respond to my note, and I meant it," the god said at last. "But if I may just ask, did it make you uncomfortable? I don't want to be too forward." Eiji was startled into bluntness. "I loved it!" At long last, Lord Felix met his gaze fully. The god looked so hopeful that Eiji found his guts twisting around that strange, soft feeling again. "Really?" his master breathed, a smile spreading over his face. "That's wonderful! Thank you!" What was Lord Felix thanking him for? Liking the note? Then again, he'd also thanked Eiji for kissing him. "If I haven't scared you off, may I ask you for a favor?" The god looked sheepish, but Eiji's heart leapt at the words. "Nothing would please your servant more, my lord," he gushed, feeling the corners of his own mouth rise irrepressibly. "Please allow me to be of service." "May I please drink from you?" Joy sparked all up and down Eiji's spine. "It would be my pleasure, my lord." He tilted his head to bare his neck, but instead of latching on, his master got to his feet and extended a hand to help Eiji up as well. Gods! Eiji was in danger of swooning as their palms met and clasped together. Had the touch of his master's cold, rough hand always been so thrilling? Each minuscule scrape from a callus felt like the shocks one got from rubbing wool. Eiji followed obediently as his master led him over to one of the big soft chairs. Of course, Lord Felix had mentioned before that he preferred to feed while Eiji was sitting down. "Are you comfortable?" "Yes, my lord." "Please, please, just bite me." "I am unworthy of my lord's kind concern." "Sweetheart, we both know that's not true." Lord Felix spoke with such assurance that Eiji didn't dare to contradict him. Anyhow, he didn't want to risk ruining the moment and losing his chance to serve in such a vital, not to mention intimate, way. Lord Felix leaned closer, and Eiji closed his eyes in anticipation. The god's perfume tickled his nose, and every hair on his body seemed to lift in delicious tension. Then chilly lips found his neck, and sharp teeth bit deep. It felt good. It had never hurt very much when Lord Antony had fed from him either, but this was still so much better. When the familiar icy pull of blood loss and accompanying lightheadedness slammed into him, Eiji felt no fear of leaning into the strong arms that had crept around his shoulders. Lord Felix only took a few swallows, but when he pulled his mouth away from Eiji's throat, he left his arm in place, cradling him tenderly as his head spun from that dizziness that always followed a feeding. It was wonderful to rest like this, to give his weight over to his master and trust that he would be supported. After a long moment, Eiji opened his eyes blearily and found that Lord Felix's face was still just a few inches away from his own. The god's pupils were blown wide and his lips were trembling a little, but there wasn't even the slightest drop or smear of blood still clinging to them. His lips, full and soft, so gentle they could make a kiss feel like a daydream. Eiji didn't realize he was staring until those gorgeous lips moved. "Eiji, may I please kiss you?" Eiji was so drunk on the strange elation that followed a feeding, he didn't even answer. He just leaned in and brought his lips to Lord Felix's. The first few kisses were hesitant and blundering, but just like last night, they quickly found one another's rhythm. The god's lips were just as wonderful as before, just as soft and undemanding, and Eiji's whole body thrummed with their every movement. Lord Felix's arm tightened around his shoulder and pressed him closer to the great bulk of the god's chest. Had anybody ever been cradled more tenderly? Eiji didn't plan to brush his tongue over Lord Felix's lips, but somehow it was happening anyway. As soon as it did, the god's mouth opened so easily to his tentative exploration that Eiji forgot to be shocked with himself. Lord Felix's mouth was startlingly warm compared with the chill of his skin. A second later, Eiji registered the rich metallic taste. Ah, the heat had come from his own blood. That might have been an off-putting thought, if not for the way Lord Felix moaned right then, his whole body seeming to melt against Eiji's. They kissed until Eiji's head was spinning worse than ever, not from the blood loss, but from the careful flicks of Lord Felix's tongue and the way the god held him. He was achingly hard, and his lips felt hot and swollen by the time his master pulled back, just far enough to press their foreheads together. "Eiji," the god whispered, his voice ragged and reverent. "Gods, Eiji, a person could get addicted to your kisses." Wishing that he could come up with something flirtatious to say in response, Eiji could only manage a dazed, "My lord honors me." The joyous light in his master's eyes dimmed a little at the words, and Eiji regretted saying anything at all. Still, he had to at least try to salvage the moment that had been progressing so perfectly, and the only way forward was with more words. He just hoped he wouldn't make things worse. "The only greater honor would be if my lord would allow me to display the extent of my training." Eiji didn't know how much of his erotic training he even remembered at this point, but he hoped none of those nerves were evident in his voice, which he tried to pitch at a sultry whisper. I could please you with my mouth? Or, thank you, sweetheart. As soon as Lord Felix said sweetheart, Eiji knew he was going to be turned down. It didn't matter how soft and intimate his master's voice was. When the god was caught up in their kissing, he always called him Eiji. I have no doubt that you're wonderfully skilled, but I'm not quite ready for something like that. Sure enough. I need to know that you want it for yourself, too, and not just to please me, remember? Yes, Eiji remembered his example of ordering Rokuro and Norio to befriend him all too vividly. Still, his cock, no, his whole body thrummed with the force of his desire. How much more could he possibly want something? My lord, he faltered, then fell silent. It wasn't his place to wheedle or persuade. He'd been far too bold tonight, in any number of ways. If his master didn't wish to make use of him, well, that was his own fault for not being more desirable. He would simply have to hope that he could do better next time. Seeming to sense his disappointment, Lord Felix pressed a kiss to his forehead. The god's lips were already cooling, and the gentle touch felt like a breeze. Eiji couldn't help relaxing into the tenderness, just a little. Anyhow, it wouldn't be safe tonight, Lord Felix said. It's been almost a year since I had any elf blood, so I'm not at my best or sanest. Tomorrow night I have to drink from a prisoner. It's horrible, but I shouldn't complain. I'm sure it's much worse to be the prisoner. Eiji couldn't understand half of what the god was saying, but of course it wasn't his place to ask. Instead, he tried to school his face into a sympathetic expression as his mind wondered incredulously how this could fail to be anybody's best or sanest. As if to provide more fuel for his doubt, Lord Felix gave him a warm smile and another kiss, this time on his cheek. It's usually my least favorite night of the year, but this year I get to come home to you afterwards, which I found improves life a great deal. My lord honors his unworthy servant. The words seemed to fill Eiji's mouth and batter at his teeth to be let out, but he swallowed them down. Whenever he spoke, he ruined everything. Instead, he offered a smile and hoped that it would convey the joy, the almost painful softness he felt. It seemed to do well enough, because the god smiled shyly, ducking his head so that he could peer at Eiji through his lashes. Kissing should be safe enough, though, if you're willing. Eiji was, more than willing, in fact. As his master's hands tangled carefully in his hair, Eiji remembered Lord Felix's words. A person could also get addicted to your kisses, my lord. I think I already am.